Picture this. It's the year 218 AD. A 14-year-old boy from the deserts of Syria rides into Rome not as a triumphant general, but as a living god, draped in silks, crowned with jewels, and clutching a sacred black meteorite. He declares a new era. He was a high priest of an alien sun god, Elagabalus, and he arrived in Rome with a mission to erase its gods, mock its traditions, and remake it in his own image. His first decree, Jupiter was no longer supreme. The new god of Rome was a black stone from Syria, and Elagabalus was its divine vessel. His name, and in just 4 years, he would bring the Roman Empire to its knees not with armies, but with scandal, sacrilege, and sensual chaos. Elagabalus wasn't just an emperor. Golden incense choked the air. Drums thundered through the night. But even more explosive were his public marriages to men. He wed a charioteer named Heracles, then an athlete named Zoticus who was given a golden palace and paraded through the streets as the emperor's husband. Nude dancing, gender-fluid priests, and forbidden rituals replaced Roman discipline. Senators were forced to attend orgies disguised as religious festivals. The emperor himself led the ceremonies, sometimes as a man, often as a woman, always as a spectacle. But that was only the beginning. Inside the imperial palace, Rome's sacred halls transformed into an Eastern temple. He married not once, not twice, but at least 5 times, including a sacred virgin priestess, a violation so shocking it sent shudders through Roman law. But even more explosive were his public marriages to men. He wed a charioteer named Heracles, then an athlete named Zoticus who was given a golden palace and paraded through the streets as the emperor's husband. He demanded to be called empress, and allegedly offered vast rewards to any physician who could surgically turn him into a woman. Ancient sources describe him as not only gender-defying, but governors begged for support, while Elagabalus designed new costumes for his next ritual. The gladiatorial games were replaced with sun god worship. Citizens, once entertained, now even the loyal Praetorian Guard grew restless. He filled his palace with lovers, prostitutes, and pleasure architects, tasked with inventing new forms of erotic entertainment. Some claimed he built a tower just to drop rose petals on his guests, until they suffocated beneath the perfumed avalanche. Elagabalus wore makeup, wigs, and gowns. Meanwhile, the empire bled. Taxes sought to fund his endless pageants. Border wars were ignored, and behind the scenes, his own grandmother Julia Misa, the power broker who made him emperor, was plotting his downfall. But Elagabalus wasn't done shocking Rome. Inside the palace, every night was a carnival of excess. He converted entire wings into erotic playgrounds. Walls were covered in mirrors, fountains flowed with wine, and guests chosen not for rank, but for beauty were handpicked by the emperor himself. Courtiers claimed he auctioned nights in his own bed, disguised as a priestess to curious noblemen. He once invited senators to a feast, only to prank them with furniture glued to the floor and food made of waxen. Insult to Roman dignity. That turned amusement into humiliation. He allegedly trained snakes to crawl into the beds of Roman nobles, then laughed as they fled screaming. He built a rotating dining room ceiling, inspired by Nero, that rained down perfumes, gold dust, and exotic petals until guests fainted or gagged. Rumors claimed he considered castrating himself in the ultimate act of devotion to Elagabalus. Whether myth or truth, these stories cemented his reputation as both a fanatic and a deviant. Elagabalus kept a public list of his lovers, and their attributes had become a threat to the very survival of the empire. He was obsessed with control over religion, sex, and even death. But even in death, Elagabalus defied erasure. No damnatio memoria could silence a reign this outrageous. He reportedly sent assassins after critics, and delighted in watching executions turn into theater. In one infamous episode, he released wild animals, lions, leopards, and panthers into the bedrooms of drunken guests just to see who would survive. His thirst for spectacle blurred into sadism. He declared his own divine marriage to the sun, staged a celestial wedding ceremony in which he wore a golden bridal veil and rode a chariot through the streets, cheered by forced spectators. He was fascinated by pain as ritual, and sometimes forced priests to undergo self-mutilation in honor of his god, while his mother Julia Soemius desperately tried to maintain order. Her son spiraled further into delusion, demanding to be worshipped as both god and goddess, emperor and empress, and through it all, Rome endured. Until it couldn't anymore. By the end, even the Eastern soldiers who once hailed him began to whisper, "This boy, this god, this empress of Rome." His brutal end, dragged and butchered by those sworn to protect him, wasn't just a political act, it was a ritual purge, a cleansing of what many saw as a cosmic stain on Rome's soul. In a world built on conquest, law, and masculine virtue, he reigned not with a sword but with silk, incense, and ecstasy, and for that, history never forgot him.